Your phone starts ringing, and for a split second, everything inside you pauses. The screen lights up with a name you recognize, maybe even someone you care about, yet your thumb hovers just above the answer button. Why does something so small suddenly feel so heavy? The sound repeats, sharp, insistent, almost accusing, and instead of reaching out, you pull back. You tell yourself you'll call later, that now isn't the right moment, but deep down you know that's not the whole truth. There's a quiet resistance you can't quite explain, a tension between who you want to be and what you actually do. So you let it ring. And as the call fades into silence, a question lingers louder than the ringtone ever was. Why do you keep doing this, even when a part of you wants to answer? And somehow, that moment reveals more about you than expected. You've probably told yourself it's laziness, or maybe even rudeness, like you're somehow failing at something as simple as answering a call. But what if that explanation is completely wrong? What if the hesitation you feel in that moment isn't a flaw in your character, but a reflection of how your mind is wired to respond to pressure? Because that's what a ringing phone really is, an immediate demand, unpredictable, unscripted, and impossible to fully control. Your brain doesn't just hear a ringtone, it registers uncertainty, expectation, and the need to respond in real time. And for a mind that craves clarity or emotional safety, that can feel overwhelming. So instead of labeling yourself as avoidant or careless, consider a different perspective. You're not avoiding the person, you're avoiding the pressure of the unknown. There's no pause button in a live conversation, no chance to carefully choose your words, no guarantee of how it will unfold. And your brain, always trying to protect you, chooses the safer option, delay. When you see it this way, something shifts. The guilt softens, and in its place, understanding begins to grow. Think about what actually happens the moment you answer a call. There's no buffer, no space to gather your thoughts, no quiet second to decide how you want to show up. You're immediately on, expected to listen, process, and respond in real time. That's a very different mental demand compared to texting, where you can pause, reread, edit, and even step away if you need to. With a message, you stay in control of the pace. With a call, that control disappears. And your brain feels that loss instantly. It's not just communication, it's performance under mild pressure. You can't refine your words or soften a reaction after it slips out. If it's a work call, maybe you worry about saying something wrong or being caught off guard. If it's an unknown number, your mind starts filling in possibilities, most of them negative. Even with people you know, there's unpredictability. What will they say? How long will it last? What will they need from you? All of this creates cognitive load, a kind of mental strain that builds faster than you realize. So when your phone rings, your hesitation isn't random. It's your mind recognizing that this interaction will require immediate energy, attention, and emotional presence. And sometimes, without consciously thinking it through, you decide you don't have that to give. Beneath that hesitation, something quieter but more powerful is at work. It's not just about the call itself, it's the anticipation of what could happen once you answer. Your mind starts running ahead of you, imagining awkward pauses, saying the wrong thing, not knowing how to respond fast enough. This is anticipatory anxiety, and it doesn't wait for the conversation to begin, it builds before you even press accept. In real time, your brain is trying to manage multiple layers at once. What are they saying? What do they expect from me? How do I respond in a way that sounds right? That constant internal dialogue, don't mess this up, say something smart, don't make it weird, creates a subtle but intense pressure. And because there's no pause button, no moment to recalibrate, the fear of slipping up feels amplified. So what do? You delay. Not because you don't care, but because your mind is trying to regulate that discomfort. Avoidance, in this case, becomes a strategy, a way to stay in control when the situation feels unpredictable. It gives you temporary relief, a sense of safety. But it also reinforces the loop, quietly teaching your brain that the call was something to escape from in the first place. If you trace this pattern back far enough, it rarely begins with a phone call at all. It begins with moments where speaking up didn't feel safe or fully received. Maybe it was being interrupted as a child, or trying to explain something important and being dismissed halfway through. Maybe it was the feeling of being judged for saying the wrong thing, even when your intention was clear. Over time, your brain doesn't just remember those moments, it learns from them. And learning, in this case, means association. Speaking becomes linked with risk. Not physical danger, but emotional exposure. The possibility of being misunderstood, corrected, or laughed at lingers in the background. So your system adapts in the only way it knows how. It slows you down, makes you hesitate, gives you time to avoid situations where you might feel that discomfort again. That's why even now, when a phone rings, something older gets activated. It's not just this call, it's echoes of earlier experiences where you didn't feel fully in control of how you were received. The hesitation isn't irrational when seen through that lens, it's protective. And if you listen closely, there's almost an inner version of you still trying to avoid that old discomfort, still trying to keep you safe from moments where your voice didn't feel fully welcomed. Not because you are broken, but because at some point, your mind decided that silence was safer than the risk of being misunderstood. It's important to realize this isn't just happening inside your mind, it's also being shaped by the world you live in. Communication itself has changed. Most of your daily interactions now happen through text, where you have time to think, edit, and respond on your own terms. Conversations have become asynchronous, meaning there's no expectation to react instantly or perfectly in real time. So when a phone call suddenly breaks that pattern, it feels almost intrusive. Not because calls are bad, but because they no longer match the rhythm your brain has adapted to. You're used to control, spacing, and emotional distance that messaging naturally provides. A call removes all of that in one moment. And socially, tolerance for real-time pressure has quietly decreased. People are less practiced in unscripted conversation, less comfortable with unpredictable pacing, and more sensitive to being put on the spot. So it's not just you feeling this shift, it's a broader cultural adjustment happening in real time. In that context, your hesitation makes even more sense. You're not resisting communication itself. You're reacting to a format that feels increasingly out of sync with how you've learned to connect with others today. And yet, even after you let the call go unanswered, the story doesn't really end there. In the immediate moment, there's relief. A soft release of pressure, like stepping out of something you weren't ready to handle. The silence feels lighter, safer, more manageable. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later, when you have more energy, more clarity, more time, but then something shifts. That relief slowly starts to mix with something heavier. A quiet guilt creeps in, not loud enough to demand attention, but persistent enough to sit in the background of your thoughts. You start replaying the moment. I should have just picked up, it wasn't that hard, what if it was important? This is where the real tension lives, not in the call itself, but in the loop that follows it. Short-term comfort is paid for with long-term mental noise. Avoidance gives you immediate emotional safety, but it also keeps the situation unresolved, leaving your mind to carry it forward. And so you find yourself caught between two versions of yourself, the one that needed space in that moment, and the one that now has to live with the unfinished weight of not answering. But when you step back from the guilt and the overthinking, something important becomes clear: you're not broken for reacting this way. You're responding exactly how a mind learns to respond when it's trying to protect itself from discomfort, pressure, and uncertainty. Avoiding a call isn't a character flaw, it's a form of self-protection that once made sense in moments where speaking or responding felt overwhelming. The key shift isn't about forcing yourself to suddenly become someone who never hesitates. It's about recognizing what's actually happening in real time, without immediately judging it. Because awareness changes the experience. When you see hesitation as protection instead of weakness, the emotional weight begins to loosen. You stop turning it into an identity. And in that space, something softer emerges, not pressure to fix yourself, but understanding of yourself. You can notice the pattern without being controlled by it. You can pause without shame. You can even choose differently, not from force, but from clarity. So the next time your phone rings and you feel that familiar resistance, maybe the question isn't, "What's wrong with me?" but instead, "What part of me is trying to protect me right now?"